Hey Patriots, it's Coach Ross. Today we're going to be going over the siege of Bexar. Yesterday we talked about a couple of the important individuals who were involved in the Texas Revolution, and later last week we had discussed the Battle of Gonzales, and that really kicked off our Texas Revolution. Um, so what happened in the Battle of Gonzales, just as a refresher, we had our Texas uh, settlers running off the Mexican soldiers, and a bunch of them were kind of on the retreat. Well, they ended up in San Antonio. Um, and the big thing about San Antonio is Santa Anna was pretty upset about his loss at Battle of Gonzales, and he was really upset that the Texans were revolting. He ordered General Cost to kind of set up and hold up at San Antonio and the Alamo. So we're going to kind of look at what unfolds at the siege of Behar today. So by December 1835, Texan town of Behar, also known as San Antonio, was under the control of the Mexican army. Like I told you, those guys were kind of ordered to take up there. The Mexican forces numbered 700 men, but there were only 400 Texian volunteers. So you guys can see the discrepancy in numbers there. Definitely more Mexican forces. You guys can watch this video on your own in the live slides. It's just kind of a overview of what was happening at the siege of Behar. Give you guys a better idea of what exactly went down there. So you guys can watch that portion on your own. So we go to the next slide. Okay. Siege of Behar took place October through December of 1835, so nearing the winter months. So it was, of course, we live in Bexar County. Back then they called it Behar, so San Antonio de Behar, as you guys can see on the map. Um, where San Antonio? Um, why? The Mexican forces were held up in San Antonio after the Battle of Gonzales. Mexico hoped to end the rebellion early on by controlling San Antonio. So this a major focal point in Mexican Texas and the Texas Revolution. Who was involved? General Coss, Edward Burleson, who will take over for Stephen F. Austin, and Ben Milam. And the famous quote, who will go with old Ben Milam to San Antonio to fight the Mexican soldiers?" Um, so if you guys look at the map here, it kind of gives you a little bit of information on what was happening or where people were at. The grass fight, we haven't really discussed the grass fight in here, but it wasn't really a huge ordeal. Now, some of the individuals we talked about yesterday were involved. So now we've got James Bowie entering the fray, Juan Seguin, some of those guys. Well, if you guys realize San Antonio is a city, well, they've got to get stuff in and out, right? Well, what the Mexican troops were doing is they were using mules as like a train to transport things in and out. Well, the Texian soldiers kind of got word that there was silver in one of those mule trains, and they basically fought off the Mexicans and tried to get the silver. Well, as you could probably figure out, there was no silver, but there was actually grass. So again, just like the chicken war, the name is kind of in the battle. It's not actual chickens fighting. There's not actually grass fighting here. There's fight over grass, literally. So that's what took place at the grass fight, kind of right before Siege of Behar. So the key points of the Siege of Behar: a siege is when one army is inside a fort or a city, and the other army try to block all supplies and people getting in or out. So basically, they're locked. So if you guys think about it this way, if you guys were in my classroom and you ate all your snacks that you had, you'd kind of be out of snacks and you couldn't get any more in or out, right? So that's basically what the Texan troops did. They locked them in and basically tried to force them to surrender. Um, Mexicans were inside the Alamo and the Texans surrounded them. So, like you guys can see in the picture there. On December 5th, the Texans entered the town to battle the Mexican troops. Texans went from house to house looking for General Coss and his men. So it wasn't like a true full on line of people battling each other. They were all scattered. So they had to go from house to house to try to track them down. On December 9th, General Coss finally and his men finally surrender, and they promised never to fight the Texans again. So here's a little plaque. This is actually downtown San Antonio. So it's kind of cool. General Coss and his men were released on their pledge not to continue to oppose the Constitution of 1824. Each man was allowed to keep a rifle and limited ammunition so they could get home safely. They agreed to leave the territory north of the Rio Grande, so head back into present day Mexico, and never return to fight. So Some of the people of the Texas troops, they didn't agree with this. They did not think they should have been released because they had a feeling that maybe this would come back to bite them, and it ultimately would. Um, General Cost would eventually return with his brother-in-law, Santa Anna, who, of course, is not very happy for the siege and the Battle of the Alamo. So the roles are flipped. The Texas soldiers will be in the Alamo, and then we'll have the Mexican troops outside. Okay, and this almost the same exact thing takes place. Mexico wanted revenge for what happened at the siege of Bexar. Okay, and then we've got a SpongeBob meme here. It says Mexico in 1810 declares independence, and then Americans after entering Texas want to see me do it again because that's almost what happens. And basically sums it up at the bottom. Santa Ana was not very happy. Okay. This quick little video, I will show you this because it kind of gives you a timeline of events, what takes place before the Alamo. So it's kind of good to kind of catch up where we've been thus far. So General Cost headed to northern Mexico. Battle of Gonzales takes place. Texans capture Goliad right before San Antonio de Bejar. There's the siege of Bejar. And then he goes home and returns with Santa Anna and General Urea, who we talked about yesterday. And it ultimately leads to the Battle of the Alamo. So this is where we're kind of at in our timeline of events. Okay, I was going to have you guys kind of fill this out. Um, we're going to kind of talk about the convention of 1836 a little bit later. Um, what I want you guys to realize is we've got the victory at the Battle of Gonzales, technically, and the siege of Bejar before the siege of the Alamo. So this is everything that's building up to the Alamo. Okay, the climax, which it says there. So what you guys are going to do today, you're going to go to Schoology and you're going to read the firsthand account, the Siege of Behar excerpts. So there's a couple excerpts on there, and you're just going to read the article, and then you're going to answer like a couple questions for each one. So my advice, it says in there to highlight where you got the answer. Go read through the excerpts after you've read the question, so you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for. Because remember, just like people back then in 1836 did not talk the way we do now, the words could be a little different. So make sure that you're taking time to analyze those. Okay. Um, if you guys have any questions, shoot me a message on Schoology. I'll be happy to respond. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay. If you have not completed the test from Monday, please complete it. And if you have any missing work, remember next week's the end of the 9 weeks. So please get it turned in as soon as you can. Okay. If you guys have anything or need help with anything, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you later. Have a good day.